The rails ended in midair, not gradually, sharply, the way a sentence gets cut off before it finishes. Juniper stopped at the edge first, dropped her head toward the gorge below and did not move, though Cole had given no command and heard nothing that should have stopped her. 70 feet below, a rail car hung against the cliff face, rusted to the color of old blood, motionless, patient, as if it had been waiting there for decades for exactly this moment. Juniper did not look up at Cole. She did not look back. She kept her eyes on the car below and her front paws exactly at the last tie, and she stood like that, absolutely still, with the particular stillness of an animal that has already decided something. Cole had been with Juniper long enough to know that she did not decide things lightly. What was inside that car, what had been sitting untouched at the bottom of a gorge for 40 years, Cole could not have imagined. But Juniper already knew. That much was clear from the way she stood. Not like an animal that had sensed danger, like an animal that had recognized something. And it was that, not the car, not the drop, not the rust, not the silence. It was that specific recognition that would not let Cole turn around and walk back to his truck. If you are new here, subscribe. We go to places like this every week, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. Before we go any further, have you ever had a feeling that something had been waiting a long time for you to find it? Drop it in the comments. Cole Merritt had not come to Clark County for this. He had come to sell his father's house, sign the papers, load a few boxes, and leave, the way he had left every other place he had spent time in and decided not to keep. He was 52 years old. He was built tall and lean, with the quiet, economic movements of someone who had spent a lifetime working with his hands. His brown hair, grown a little too long, was streaked with silver at the temples. His face was weathered and rugged, carved by the sun and by memories that turned out to be just as harsh. Yet his eyes held a deep, settled kindness that had survived everything he had put it through. He pulled on his boots, the leather cracked and dark with use. He shrugged into his old brown leather jacket and left it unzipped, revealing the dark flannel shirt beneath, and stepped outside into the April cold. Juniper was already at the truck, a gray and white German shepherd with amber eyes that held the particular patience of an animal that has assessed a situation completely and is simply waiting for the human to catch up. She had been his dog for 3 years. He trusted her read on things more than he trusted most people's. She had a way of going still in front of things that mattered. Not dramatic, not urgent, just absolutely present in a way that told him, pay attention. He had learned to pay attention. His father had died in February. Cole had arrived in April, not because he was busy, but because he had been putting it off the way you put off something you know is going to ask something of you. In his father's house, he had found 2 things he had not expected: a box of army letters that had never been mailed, and a topographical map with a point circled in red somewhere in the mountains. On the map, the circled point was labeled in his grandfather's handwriting. One word: bridge. But Cole had checked the county records. There was no bridge there. There was a gorge. And above the gorge, whatever was left of what had once been a bridge. Cole had folded the map and put it in his jacket pocket. He had not thought about his grandfather in 20 years. His grandfather had died when Cole was 8. Closed casket, a short service, weak coffee afterward. That was what he remembered. That and the smell of pipe tobacco. And the fact that his grandfather had always looked slightly past you when you asked him a direct question, as if the answer he was considering was located somewhere just over your left shoulder. Cole found the map in the top drawer of his father's desk, in the same folder as utility bills and an old insurance policy. Someone had traced the red circle more than once. The line was pressed deep into the paper, the way a hand presses when it is trying to make something permanent. Next to the circle, in pencil, "Don't touch. Check yourself." His grandfather's handwriting. Cole knew that handwriting from postcards, 1 per year, every year until the year his grandfather didn't send one. The map was more than 40 years old. Cole put it back in the folder. Then he took it out again. Juniper was sitting at his feet and looking at the map, not at Cole, at the map. Cole did not think much of this at the time. The following morning, he got into his truck to drive to the notary's office, and Juniper jumped into the passenger seat before Cole had his door fully open. He tied her to the porch rail outside. An old man named Greer, who had the habit of moving his pen from one side of a document to the other before saying anything difficult. Greer had asked him what he planned to do with the house. Cole said sell it. Greer moved the pen, then reached into his desk drawer and produced an envelope, sealed with Cole's name on the front in his father's handwriting. Inside was a single sentence on a piece of lined paper. The map is in the top desk drawer. Don't wait on it. Cole walked out into the cold. Juniper was still tied to the porch rail, but she was not looking at the door Cole had come through. She was looking at the mountains, looking at them the way animals look at things they have already located, steady, unhurried, with the patience of something waiting for the human beside it to catch up. Cole stood next to her for a moment. Then he untied her, opened the truck door, and drove toward the mountains. He could not have explained why. Sometimes there is no explanation. Sometimes there is just a dog looking at one thing long enough, and a note from a dead man, and a map with a circle pressed so hard into the paper that the point is indented through 3 pages below it. The paved road ended 12 kilometers from the point on the map. After that came a dirt track, narrow, rutted, overgrown at the edges so that branches dragged along the sides of the truck like something trying to slow him down. Cole drove as far as the truck would take him, then got out. The air here had changed even from the valley below. Thinner, colder, carrying the particular silence of a place that sees very few people in a given year. Juniper dropped out of the passenger seat and immediately moved slightly ahead, not rushing, not anxious, just walking, the way she walked when she already knew where she was going. Cole followed. The air up here was heavy with pine and something metallic beneath it that Cole initially mistook for water and then identified correctly. Rust. He had spent 6 years as a combat engineer. The smell of old metal in a confined space was something his body recognized before his brain did. He slowed slightly, scanned the tree line, satisfied himself there was nothing to scan for, and kept walking. Juniper did not slow. 38 minutes into the walk, Cole saw the rails. They emerged from behind a bend in the cliff face. Ordinary-looking rails, just moss-covered and the color of dried blood from decades of oxidation. The ties had softened. The first one he stepped on gave slightly underfoot. Not breaking, just yielding, the wood having taken on moisture from below over the course of years. He tested each one carefully before committing his weight. The floor gave slightly under his boot. Not broken, just soft. The wood having absorbed decades of moisture from below, the grain raised in long ridges he could feel through the sole. Juniper walked beside him on the gravel ballast between the rails, her left ear turned slightly, toward a sound Cole could not hear. Then the rails ended, simply ended, in the air, above the gorge, with a drop of approximately 70 feet to the canyon floor below. Cole stopped 3 meters from the edge. Juniper stopped at the very edge, front paws on the last tie, the gorge directly below, and looked down. Not like an animal afraid of the drop, like an animal conducting a careful examination of something below and assembling the results. Cole moved carefully to the edge and looked. The rail car was there. It was lying on its side, caught on a rock shelf about 8 feet below the lip of the cut, held by what appeared to be 2 wheels on one side and a corner of the frame on the other. It was not falling. It had not been falling for a long time. Rust had bled from the bolt heads in long vertical streaks down the metal skin, orange-brown against the dark red of the car body, each streak the exact width of a finger. The windows were gone. The roof had a ventilation grate hanging open at an angle, one hinge intact, one sheared away. The paint on the lower panels had peeled entirely in long, curling strips, exposing bare metal underneath. Dark with decades of moisture and oxidation, the surface granular where the rust had bloomed. This car had been here a long time. Whatever had happened fast, and then time had simply continued without it. Cole worked his way around the edge of the cut and found a trail, narrow, crumbling at the margins, but a trail. Down the cliff face toward the car, Juniper was already on it. She did not look back. she simply descended. Cole thought about the fact that he had not brought a rope. Then he thought about his grandfather's handwriting on the map. Don't touch. Check yourself. Then he went down. The trail held. The car, viewed from close range, was fixed to the rock shelf at 3 contact points, both rear wheels on the left side and the lower left corner of the frame. Cole's mind ran the load distribution without being asked to. It would hold. It had been holding for a long time. It would hold a while longer if nothing disturbed it. Juniper had already found a way in, a gap where a window frame had given way entirely, and pushed through without hesitation. Cole squeezed in after her. The cold inside was not mountain cold. It was the cold of a sealed space, the particular cold of air that had been sitting completely undisturbed for 4 decades and did not want to move. The smell reached him a half-second after the cold did. Old paper and the particular dry mineral smell of rust in an enclosed space. And beneath both of those, something else he recognized from field medicine and tried not to name. Cole turned on his flashlight. Juniper stood in the center of the car, moving her nose in a slow, methodical sweep that Cole recognized as active scent work. Building a picture, not following a trail. Her ears tracked left, not toward a sound Cole could hear, toward a sound Cole couldn't. Cole ran the flashlight beam around the interior and stopped. The belongings were still there, not scattered, exactly in place, as if the passengers had stood up, stepped out, and intended to return in a few minutes. On the overhead rack near what had been a window, a woman's hat. Dark navy with a ribbon, dusty but holding its shape. On the seat beneath it, an open newspaper. The financial page, stock listings, a date, November 12th, 1971. On the fold-down tray table bolted to the wall near the front, a glass, lying on its side. The dark ring it had left on the wood was still visible, still slightly darker than the surrounding surface. Someone had knocked it over in a hurry and had not come back to right it. The floor was covered in a layer of dust, even, undisturbed, unbroken, except for Juniper's tracks and Cole's own. No other tracks. 40 years, not a single person had come through. If you have ever walked into a place where time stopped and you were the first to break the stillness, drop it in the comments. He kept his flashlight moving. He picked up the newspaper carefully. The edges crumbled, but the center pages held. He read the date again. He picked up the hat. Inside the band, embroidered initials. MK, the embroidery thread was silk, still holding color, a dark burgundy against the cream of the fabric. Someone had made that by hand. Someone had known whose initials those were. He set the hat back exactly where it had been. Juniper had settled at the far end of the car, sitting beside a fold-up bench seat, looking at a spot below the seat with the same fixed attention she had given the map. Cole crossed the car and crouched. Under the seat, a leather satchel, dark, with a monogram on the clasp. The letters had been worn nearly smooth, but one remained legible, H. The leather had hardened and cracked, the surface showing a fine pattern of old checking across the grain. The clasp lock was shut. Cole tried it, solid. He lifted the satchel. Heavy, not the weight of packed clothing, the dense, flat weight of stacked papers. Juniper looked at him from 2 feet away with the same expression she had worn when he first took the map out of the desk drawer. Outside, the gorge produced a sound. Not loud, just constant, like the breathing of something large and patient that had been there before the railroad and would be there long after. Cole sat down on the bench beside Juniper and thought, if the belongings were still here, the passengers had not left on their own. They had been removed. Or they had not been removed at all. He sat with that for a long time. Juniper lay down, head on her paws, watching the gap they had entered through. Cole took out his pocket knife and worked the lock. It took 22 minutes. When it opened, he lifted the lid. Papers. A great many papers. Folded carefully, sorted into envelopes, a portion of them sealed inside waxed packets. The waxed paper crinkled at the edges, translucent yellow with age, that had kept the moisture out for 4 decades. Someone had packed this to last. Someone had known it would be a long time before anyone opened it. Cole picked up the top envelope, the date on the front, November 1971. The address, State Railroad Authority. He opened it, a technical inspection report, signed by an inspector at the bottom. Cole moved the flashlight closer. His hand was not entirely steady. He could not tell if it was the cold or something else. He read the name, Edward Henderson, his grandfather. The report was dated 3 days before the accident. It stated, bridge structure sound, all load-bearing components within tolerances, no deviations noted, cleared for unrestricted operation. Juniper lifted her head, looked at Cole, then put it back down on her paws. Cole looked at his grandfather's signature and did not move for a long time. He had found something. He had been afraid this was what he would find. Those are two very different things. He went back through the satchel a second time, more carefully. Under the wax packets, below the manifest, there was a layer of material he had not reached the first time. Smaller envelopes, no labels, the paper thicker and different in texture from the rest. He opened the first one. A photograph. Black and white, slightly blurred at one edge, the way photographs blurred when the light was wrong. It showed the bridge, intact before the failure, with two men standing on the walkway beside the railing. One of them Cole did not recognize. The other one he did, his grandfather at perhaps 45, wearing a hard hat and a heavy coat, holding a clipboard. He was looking at the camera. The expression on his face was not the expression of a man having his photograph taken. It was the expression of a man who understood what the photograph was going to mean and had not yet decided what to do about that. Cole turned the photograph over. On the back, in pencil, very faint, November 9th, 1971, 3 days before. The second man in the photograph? Cole studied him for a long time in the beam of the flashlight, Juniper warm against his side. Something about the posture of the man, the angle of the shoulders, the particular stance of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any given location. Cole looked at that posture for a long time. He thought about the name on the payment document, R. Waters. He thought about the bronze plaque above the library entrance. He put the photograph back carefully. The second small envelope contained a ticket, a passenger ticket, handwritten, the ink faded but legible. Date, November 12th, 1971. Destination, Carson Junction. Passenger, E. Henderson. His grandfather had been booked on the train that went into the gorge. Cole read the ticket 3 times. Then he sat very still with the flashlight balanced on the satchel lid, throwing a cone of light up into the tilted interior of the railcar. His grandfather had known the bridge was compromised, had signed the false report, had known what was going to happen, and had made sure he was not on that train when it happened. And for 37 years afterward, he had carried the weight of 18 people whose names he had memorized from the manifest before the company's men made the paperwork disappear. Cole did not know if he could forgive that. He did not know if forgiveness was the right frame for it. Juniper lifted her chin from her paws and looked toward the gap in the wall. Her nose moved twice in the cold air. Then she looked back at Cole. He understood. It was time to go. He gathered the papers carefully, the photographs, the ticket, the manifest, the letters, the inspection report, and packed them back into the satchel the way they had been. He closed the clasp. Outside, the mountain air hit him like a correction. Cold, real, moving, nothing like the sealed air inside. He stood on the narrow shelf of rock beside the car for a moment and looked up at the cut above him, the line of the rails ending in space against the sky. The car had been here for 40 years. Whatever had been left inside, if he had not come, would have gone with it, unread, unknown, buried under 70 feet of river water and 40 more years of silence. He had come. Juniper was already on the trail, moving upward, patient and steady, waiting for him to follow. Cole came out of the rail car with the satchel under one arm and the flashlight in his other hand. Juniper moved alongside him, a half step ahead, the way she always positioned herself when the footing was unreliable. They climbed the trail in silence. At the top, Cole sat on the edge of the cut and spread the papers across his knees in the beam of the flashlight. 23 sheets, he read slowly. Juniper lay beside him, side against his leg, the warmth of her coming through the jacket. The inspection report was falsified. Cole saw it within the first reading. The language was too clean, too formal, too correct for an actual field document. Real inspection reports had corrections, abbreviations, margin notations, the marks of a man filling out a form in imperfect conditions. This read like a transcription. A fair copy made from notes that had been carefully revised first. Someone had rewritten it. The original would have said something different, but the satchel did not contain only the report. Beneath it, in a plain envelope with no address and no stamp, was a handwritten letter. His grandfather's hand, the same as the map. Cole read it under the flashlight with the gorge breathing below him and Juniper warm against his side. The letter said, "If you are reading this, you found it. That means God gave me at least that much. I signed what they gave me to sign. They told me the bridge had already been inspected. The data was already filed. My signature was needed only for the official record. They told me this was how things were done. They paid me. Not much. Exactly enough that asking questions would have felt like ingratitude. 3 days later, the bridge failed. Officially, a single car derailed and there were no casualties. But I had seen the passenger manifest. 18 people. The company's own inspectors arrived before the county sheriff. By the time the sheriff got there, that car was no longer listed in any document. I tried to speak. I was told what would happen if I continued. Not to me, to my daughter, your mother. She was 4 years old. I stopped. I gathered everything I could, copies of the manifests, the original of the report they had me sign, the letters I wrote afterward and never sent. I put them in the satchel. I drove out there and I left it under the seat of that car because I could not destroy it and I could not give it to anyone. Maybe that is cowardice. Maybe it is the only thing I was able to do. Preserve it. Leave it for whoever came after. If you are reading this, that is you. Forgive me. Or don't. Both are honest. Edward. Cole finished reading. He folded the letter along its original creases and put it back in the envelope. The gorge was breathing below him with its steady, patient sound. Juniper moved her head from her paws to his knee. Cole didn't notice at first. Then he put his hand on the back of her neck and sat like that, not moving, not thinking in any organized way, until he became aware that the sound from the gorge had eased, or he had simply stopped hearing it. He did not know which. The passenger manifest was in a separate envelope, wax sealed, the seal intact. 18 names, 18 addresses, year of birth beside each one. The youngest was 23, the oldest, 71. Cole read through the list once, then again. He thought about the families that had existed somewhere for 40 years without knowing. Who had been told? Accident, no casualties, case closed. And the truth was that the case was 8 feet below the lip of a gorge in the mountains of Clark County, held against a rock shelf by 2 wheels and a corner of a frame, with a newspaper on the seat and a woman's hat on the rack and a glass still lying on its side on the tray table. In the last envelope, the one with the company letterhead, Western Railroad Authority, November 1971, Cole found the payment record, made out to Edward Henderson. For consulting services, infrastructure assessment, dated 1 day before the bridge failed, amount $4,000, signed by the Director of Safety Operations, 1R Waters. Cole knew that name, not from railroad history, from the library building in downtown Clark County, where the Waters name was on a bronze plaque above the entrance, from the new wing of the county hospital, where a sign read, Waters Family Medical Pavilion, from the memorial wall in the county courthouse lobby. The Waters family had built this county for 50 years, on money from a company that had buried 18 people and paid a railroad inspector $4,000 to put his name on a piece of paper that said nothing had gone wrong. Cole thought about his grandfather knowing all of this, sitting with it for 37 years, looking slightly past people when they asked him direct questions, knowing, and doing the only thing he had been able to bring himself to do, put the evidence somewhere it would be safe and wait for someone with a reason to look. Cole had spent his whole adult life leaving places before they could ask him to stay, leaving when things got complicated, leaving when the truth that was available was not the truth he wanted. He looked at the list of 18 names in his hand and understood something about his grandfather that he had not understood before. His grandfather had also left. But before he left, he had hidden the truth and marked the map and told his son, who had told Cole. That was something, not a redemption, but something. Cole picked up the satchel. Juniper moved to his side. They walked down from the cut toward the truck together, her half a step ahead, as always. Cole called the state attorney general's office the following morning, not the county, the state. He described what he had found without excess detail. They scheduled a meeting for the following week. He put the satchel in the truck bed and locked the cover. Before he drove down from the mountain, he stopped once more at the edge of the cut and looked at the car below. In daylight, it looked smaller than it had at night, just rusted metal against a rock shelf, unremarkable from this angle, easy to miss if you didn't know what you were looking at. Juniper stood beside him, not at the edge, a step back, head lowered slightly. Cole looked at the car for a while. He thought about the 18 names, about the families that might still exist somewhere, about what it means to know something after 40 years of not knowing it. The mountain was quiet around them. An April wind moved through the tree line below the cut. The car did not move. It had not moved in 40 years. It would be there when they came to document it. He turned and walked to the truck. Juniper followed. The meeting with the state investigator lasted 2 hours and 40 minutes. Her name was Patricia Solis, and she had the habit of writing something down in her notebook every time Cole said a specific date, even when he was fairly certain she already had it noted. She asked him to walk through the discovery twice, once straight through, once in reverse order, starting with the letter and working backward to the moment he first saw the map in his father's desk. Cole did this without difficulty. He had replayed the sequence himself enough times that the order of it was fixed. Juniper lay outside the door of the interview room on the hallway floor. Cole could see her through the narrowed window into the door, a gray and white shape, completely still, head on pause, utterly unbothered by the linoleum or the fluorescent light or the particular institutional quality of the air. Solis asked whether he had any other family members who might have known about the satchel, his father specifically. Cole thought about the envelope his father had left with the notary, the single sentence on the lined paper. The map is in the top desk drawer. Don't wait on it. He said, my father knew about the map. He left instructions for me to check it. Whether he knew specifically what was at the end of the map, I don't know. He probably knew enough. She wrote something down. Cole looked at the photograph she had placed on the table between them, his grandfather and the second man on the bridge walkway, November 9th, 1971. She asked if he had been able to identify the second man. Cole said he had a reasonable theory, but he would rather not state it until she had run her own identification. She looked at him for a moment, the kind of look that is an evaluation, and wrote something down. The investigator told him it would be a long process, possibly a very long one. Cole said, that's fine, I'm not going anywhere. That was the truth. For the first time in a long time, that was simply and completely the truth. He had not sold the house, he was staying. Some things don't require a ceremony. 3 weeks later, Solis called. The second man in the photograph had been identified, confirmed by a retired company archivist in his 80s who had recognized the face without hesitation and who had, according to Solis, been surprisingly willing to talk. The name was Raymond Waters, son of the company founder, director of safety operations from 1968 to 1979. Cole was standing at the kitchen sink when she told him this. He set his coffee mug down with 2 fingers, a habit from the years when his hands were not always reliable, and did not say anything for a moment. Solis let the moment sit. Then she said, Raymond Waters had died in 1994. His son, the current head of the Waters Family Charitable Foundation, whose name was on the hospital wing and the library plaque, was named Gregory Waters. Gregory Waters had been 17 years old in November 1971. Cole said, so the man who made the decision is dead. She said, yes. He said, and the man whose name is on the buildings didn't make the decision. She said, "That's not how inheritance works in the legal sense." He said, "I know." Cole thanked her and set down the phone. Juniper was lying under the kitchen table. He could feel her against his boot. He sat down on the kitchen floor, not on a chair, on the floor, with his back against the cabinet, and she moved over and put her head against his leg. He sat like that for a while. He thought about his grandfather at 81, dying in a house he had never left, with a map in his desk drawer in a secret he had carried for 37 years, and one son who knew enough to forward the message, but not enough to act on it himself. He thought about what it costs a person to know something and not be able to give it to anyone. He recognized that cost. He had spent 20 years leaving places before they could ask him to stay, not carrying an 18-person secret, but making the same motion, just smaller. The same instinct, the same turning away when the weight of a thing became visible. He had not fixed what his grandfather did. He could not. But he had found what his grandfather left. 18 names now had a chance to be something more than a closed file in a cabinet no one opened. That was enough to stay for. There was a second letter in the satchel, not from his grandfather, typed on company letterhead, but signed with a woman's name that did not match any name in the company records from 1971. Cole had read it 3 times. He did not know who she was or why her letter had been placed with the rest. He did not find out. Some things stay where they were put. Juniper lay at his feet in the hallway of the state building when he came out from the last meeting. He looked at her. She tilted her head exactly 4 centimeters to the left. He said her name quietly. Her ear came back toward him, one small rotation. He put his hand on her back, and they walked out together into the April afternoon. The drive home took 2 hours. Juniper slept in the passenger seat. The late light caught the silver in her coat and made her look older than he thought she was. He looked at her once at a long red light and looked away. The house was sitting in the last of the afternoon light when he pulled in. Weatherboard, unpainted for longer than it should have been. The front porch listing slightly to the left. Exactly as it had been when he arrived. He had come to pill it. He was not going to sell it. Juniper dropped out of the passenger side and went to the back step and sat down and waited. He unlocked the door. She went in. He followed. Inside, the box of unmailed Army letters was still on the kitchen table where he had left it. He made coffee. He sat down. He did not open the box. Not tonight. There was only so much a person could open at one time.